in boxing, but I do think when you actually come up against a proper, serious boxer, and I suspect that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. may be that person, it could all come crashing down.
Is that you think that your opinion matters?
I think he's coming into this fight with the right approach, with the right mindset.
No, I don't think it's good. I think he train hard, but it's not good fighter.
Word going around in boxing circles. Jake Paul's getting slept in round 5. They say Chavez Jr. brings way too much heat, more power, more know-how, and years of real fight grit. This isn't some YouTuber sideshow. It's Jake's biggest test yet, and insiders believe this might be the moment he finally runs into someone who's not just chasing a paycheck.
So I've just interviewed your opponent, Julio, very confident, says he's going to knock you out in the 9th round.
Yeah, man, you know, he's a dumbass. And so it's going to be apparent on Saturday when he's the one that gets knocked out.
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. didn't hold back. He straight up said Jake can train all he wants, but it doesn't matter, he's still coming up short. For Julio, boxing isn't about flashy workouts or highlight reels. It's about instincts, rhythm, and going toe-to-toe with real fighters, and in his eyes, Jake hasn't proven a thing when it comes to that.
But one thing I've gotten off him during this week is that he's viewing this fight as at least a pathway to some form of redemption. He's not going to get all his fans back. He's not going to redeem himself on the eyes of the fans of his father. But if he can beat Jake Paul and beat him convincingly, maybe don't think quite so much about quitting against Daniel Jacobs or against Fanfara or that terrible performance against Anderson Silva. Like, I think the point is, I think he's coming into this fight with the right approach, with the right mindset. I promise you, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is not just here for a payday. He is not just here to collect a check and to get whitewashed by Jake Paul over 10 rounds. He's coming to win. He may not win. Jake could turn out to be even better than maybe people generally think, but he's coming to win, and I think it's going to be a competitive fight.
Even Piers Morgan jumped in, calling out Jake's career for what it is. He made it clear Jake still hasn't faced a real, legit pro in their prime. According to Piers, Chavez Jr. is the moment of truth, and he's not alone. More and more, voices in boxing are saying the same thing. Julio's the guy who could finally put an end to the hype.
Shit. YouTube this, YouTube that, Disney that. This shit is not a joke. I'm knocking out the best of the best, beating all of these people time in and time again. And it's about time that you old heads and all these fucking boxers who think they know about the sport put some respect on my name.
Yeah, but you're not going to you're going to make a ton of money. Listen, I think as a businessman, you are brilliant, right? I give you full credit for that. When you took on Mike Tyson as a business enterprise, there's no argument. You absolutely crushed the numbers, crushed the money and everything else. But the idea that you can say on the one hand, I'm a killer, I get in the ring with the best people, and you get in the ring with a guy who's 50, he's literally nearly as old as me.
I'm not talking about Mike Tyson. I'm talking about Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley, champions in their sport. Golden Gloves champions, Ryan Moreland, Andre August, undefeated fighters. The list goes on and on.
But what great boxer have you been in the ring with?
Former world champion on Saturday, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., son of the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, besides me, of course. Like, I don't know what you guys want to see. I tried to fight Canelo. He ducked out of it. You asked him about that. You said he's going to kill me. So what do you want? You're laughing when you say, oh, Jake is going to fight Canelo. I think you would kill him. But then you're like, oh, you're not fighting this guy. You're the problem here with this whole situation and criticism of my career. I'm trying to fight the best people, and that's why Chavez is here on Saturday. I want Canelo. I want Anthony Joshua. I want all these people. It's been 5 years in this sport.
But the problem is the only proper boxer you fought was Tommy Fury, and he beat you. And he's not even the best. He's not even the best fighter in his family.
Golden Gloves champion Andre August, Brian Borland as well. Anderson Silva was an undefeated boxer. I mean, you can sit there and make up shit, but you actually don't know your facts. I fought multiple boxers with professional records, and including Mike Tyson himself, who I think is going to be a harder fight than Chavez.
Eddie Hearn is one of those voices echoing that concern. He respects Crawford's skills, but points out that he's never had a marquee fight against a great opponent in their prime. It wasn't a diss, it was more of a reality check on how the sport has failed to give Crawford the spotlight matchups he deserved. Hearn acknowledged Crawford's wins, like the one over Ricky Burns, but compared to the
I love that dude. He's cool. But he's gonna win.
Okay, if he wins, what does it say?
Nothing. Chavez is gonna win.
And what does that say if he beats Jake Paul?
Not much. Just a good win. A lot of millions of dollars, and then maybe do a rematch, which is bad. Make a lot of money.
Canelo's resume is as deep as it gets, stacked with names like Floyd Mayweather, Gennady Golovkin, Sergey Kovalev, Miguel Cotto, and Caleb Plant. He's jumped across divisions, chasing both belts and greatness. Sure, some of those wins came with context. Golovkin and Kovalev were aging, and there were controversies, but the point remains, Canelo has consistently faced elite opposition. That's why guys like De La Hoya
But yeah. Asking about Jake Paul. What do you got on the Jake Paul fight?
Jake Paul and Chavez. Julio. Viva Julio.
Viva Julio! Oh, shit.
Julio's winning.
Oh, that's Manny's manager. He's putting it out there.
I'll see you Saturday night. Viva Julio.
But not everyone thinks this is some kind of mismatch. For a lot of fans and analysts, Terence Crawford's pure skill is the great equalizer. His footwork, his control of distance, his ability to switch stances and read opponents, these tools make him a nightmare in the ring. Against Errol Spence, Crawford didn't just win, he embarrassed him. It was clinical, patient, and brutal. And yes, moving up to super middleweight.
But one thing I've gotten off him during this week is that he's viewing this fight as at least a pathway to some form of redemption. He's not going to get all his fans back. He's not going to redeem himself on the eyes of the fans of his father. But if he can beat Jake Paul and beat him convincingly, maybe don't think quite so much about quitting against Daniel Jacobs or against Fanfara or that terrible performance against Anderson Silva. Like, I think the point is, I think he's coming into this fight with the right approach, with the right mindset. I promise you, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is not just here for a payday. He is not just here to collect a check and to get whitewashed by Jake Paul over 10 rounds. He's coming to win. He may not win. Jake could turn out to be even better than maybe people generally think, but he's coming to win, and I think it's going to...
Still, De La Hoya's sudden shift has people talking. Is this really about boxing or business? Oscar's history with Canelo is complicated. They were tight. Then they split in a very public, messy fallout when Canelo left Golden Boy. Now, with Saudi Arabia throwing its weight behind the sport and stacking mega-events, even old grudges seem to be getting pushed aside. Turki Alashi, the Saudi power player making...
I really don't know his habits. You know, he has a bad track record on, preparing. But look, man, if Chavez comes in at least 60%, then I think Jake really has a fight, because one thing that Chavez has is experience. He may not have the youth, and the agility that Jake has right now, but he does have the experience, and I think that experience would give Jake a problem.
I completely agree with you. I think this is an excellent fight for Jake Paul. Officially, he is 11-1, but he's really like 2-1 as a boxer.
Yeah.
He's fought Tommy Fury. He fought a couple of no-name cruiserweights. I guess if you want to throw Mike Perry into that list, you can say he's 3-1, but against guys that are traditional boxers, he's a 2.
Alashik is playing a major role in making Canelo versus Croft happen. Reports say he met with Crawford ahead of the announcement, and what Crawford told him was big. This might be his last fight. No rematch clause, no guarantees, just one shot to make history. That's added some serious weight to this already massive event. Crawford is treating this like the final chapter, a legacy-defining night that could either seal his greatness or end in bitter
He knows exactly what to do. Jake Paul just fought against Mike Tyson, who didn't even throw one punch. This is not Mike Tyson. You are gonna get your ass whooped.
No hay manera de que le gane Jake Paul.
There is no way Jake Paul can.
Esta preparación que hizo Julio, Jake Paul no la sabe, ¿entiendes?
This camp,
Jake Paul doesn't know it. Va a salir a tirarle chingazos y Jake Paul va a andar corriendo como gallina.
Julio's gonna go in throwing some serious punches, and you're gonna be running like a chicken without a head.
Plenty of fans are eyeing this fight with raised eyebrows, and who can blame them? Jake Paul's track record of picking off retired athletes and fellow influencers has turned a lot of boxing purists into skeptics. Some worry this might just be another scripted circus. But if it's for real, even with Chavez Jr. not at his peak, things get interesting, because no matter what, Julio's been in with real fighters and taken real damage. That history still counts. even if the mileage is showing.
Let's talk about this one here. This Saturday, June 28th, we've got Jake Paul. He's going to take on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And I don't know if this is a real fight or if it's a fake one. So let's talk about this. All right, let's say this is a real fight because I don't know, I don't want to sound like a hater, but some of Jake Paul's fights look like they've been staged. So let's say this is a real fight. This is the real deal. Listen, man, Chavez Jr. has never been the greatest boxer out here. He's lacked in discipline. He's lacked in the sport, but nevertheless, he is a credible opponent. Jake Paul, on the other hand, I don't know, Some of the fights look staged. Some of the knockouts look like the guys have been paid. With that being said, the problem child is taking on Chavez Jr. this weekend. Let's take a look at both men's professional record. Yes, I said professional record. This is a box rec. This is Jake Paul's professional record. All right, cool. Let's get into it. 11 wins, 7 coming via knockout, and 1 loss. Let's take a look at Jake Paul's actual professional record. So he's fought 3 professional boxers. 1 Tommy Fury, 1 Andre August, and 1 Ryan Berlin.
Oscar De La Hoya isn't brushing this one off. He sees it as a serious upgrade in Jake Paul's journey. To him, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is a whole different beast compared to the soft touches Jake's faced before. Those past opponents barely scratched the surface, but Julio, he brings chaos, experience, and grit. Oscar believes this is Jake's real proving ground if he can survive it.
And I'm really excited because the only reason I got involved with this is because he's fighting a real fighter now. Julio Cesar Chavez went 12 rounds with Canelo. He is an ex-world champion in boxing. So this is a real legit fight. I'm looking forward to it. I'm obviously questioning what Chavez Jr. will we see. Will he be in great shape? Will he not be in shape? Will he make weight? Will he do a lot of questions behind it? But ultimately, you have to tell yourself, Jake Paul, congratulations. This is a real first legitimate world champion fighter you're fighting.
Jeff Mayweather's not as sold. He knows Chavez Jr. used to be the real deal, but he questions how much of that's still left. In Jeff's opinion, the timing of this fight feels too convenient. Julio's way past his prime. He doesn't think Jake's necessarily better, just smarter in how this was set up. For Jeff, it feels more like branding than a true challenge. Good for marketing, maybe not great for boxing.
Canelo back down, all that kind of stuff, but is this, another name that just, like I said, gives the detractors more feel for their fighter? Does this help Jake at all?
I don't think it's really going to help him that much. I mean, it will in the sense that he's fought a legitimate fighter that actually was
he was a
professional fighter and a world champion. But to get him after a 5-year layoff and him being inactive is almost just like fighting Mike Tyson.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the same thing. It's like an older guy past his prime who hasn't fought in a long time. I guess he doesn't have an MMA career behind him, so maybe that's a good thing, but it's a lot of the same thing that people have always complained about.
Yeah. But I think this is a fight that Jake can win. I mean, legitimately win.
Yeah.
This fight's brought back one of boxing's oldest debates. What wins, youth or experience? Jake's younger, sure. Fitter, probably. But Julio's got that calm, technical mastery that only comes from years in the game. Analysts say his timing, defense, and fight IQ are on a different level. Jake might be wild and explosive early, but it's Julio's cool-headed craft that could...
How good is Jake Paul's next opponent, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? Can he pull off the upset and beat Jake? Now, Chavez Jr. in his prime was a really solid fighter. 46-0, 4-time WBC middleweight champion. This is him against Sergio Martinez, a top 3 pound-for-pound fighter. Hurt him bad with the left hook, dropped him in the 12th round, nearly got the finish, but Martinez did end up winning this fight. And then after losing the title in 2017, this is him versus Canelo in 2017. Solid pressure fighter, good body shots, decent hand speed, but these are pretty much his only highlights in the fight, because he pretty much lost every round 12-0. But still, he did go the distance with Canelo. But then you get to his most recent fight versus Uriah Hall at cruiserweight. He still got some decent body shots, but he looks considerably slower fighting at a heavier weight class. His footwork is a bit plotty, and he's not as fast. Look, Chavez Jr., he's not a bad fighter. He's never been a bad fighter. But what he is very undisciplined and considerably slower and more flat-footed. at 39 years old fighting at cruiserweight. You know, the technicality, the experience, it will give him a 25 to 30% chance. But the youth, the size, the speed of Jake, that'll give him more of the edge.
Let's be real, this fight is a marketing dream. Jake Paul is a walking headline, and the Chavez name still holds weight in boxing circles. Put them together, and you've got the perfect storm. Old school fans want to see if Chavez Jr. has anything left, and Jake's massive following guarantees clicks, views, and packed seats. No matter how it ends, both fighters walk away, richer in money and buzz. It's legacy meets influencer clout, and it's built.
Let's find a real boxer. This man's an ex-world champion. He's way smaller when he was competing.
Yeah.
He has to come up to my weight. He's the son of a legend. I'm now Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
He's Mexican. It's the best you could do. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint, it's brilliant. You can't really do better than that if you're not trying to feed man to the wolves. But you're trying to make it appear so.
But do you reckon it's going to generate numbers?
Good question.
It depends how they market it.
It depends what Chavez comes on.
Yeah.
Because Jake won't be able to push this himself. It depends what Chavez comes on. If Chavez comes on some like, listen, bro,
I want to teach you boxing.
Yeah, then it can sell.
That type of energy.
But if he comes on the vibe we know he's on, which is why even his dad don't really mess.
Say what you will about his recent struggles, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has earned his stripes. He's a former WBC champ who stood in the ring with real killers and never backed down. His skills, stamina, and ring IQ were elite in his prime. Some of that doesn't just disappear. If he can dial back into that old school form, Jake's in for a serious wake-up call. You can't train for that kind of battle-tested experience on YouTube.
So Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who wins? Now this fight should really come down to two things. The youth of Jake versus the experience and technicality of Chavez Jr. Now Jake, he'll probably be the faster guy, carries more power at cruiserweight. I don't think he's got good footwork by any means, but Chavez Jr. does look more plotty at cruiserweight, considering he is a middleweight / super middleweight moving up in weight later in his career. Now Chavez Jr., I do think he does a lot of things better than Jake. Defensively, his hand positioning is better, his lead left hook is better, his combinations and body shots are a lot more technical, but ultimately it comes down to can he execute the way he used to? Because if you look at his last fight against Uriah Hall, he didn't throw as much volume as he used to. Like I said, looked a lot heavier on the feet. And this was a 6-round fight, so who knows how his cardio will hold up in a 10-rounder against Jake. But since Chavez Jr. is quite durable, you know, he went 12 with Canelo, went 12 with Sergio Martinez. I do think Jake wins this one by decision, just being the more active guy on the front foot. But for Chavez Jr. having any chance to win, he's got to throw 2 to 3 times more punches than he did in his last couple of fights.
Jake Paul might be one of the most polarizing names in boxing, but one thing's for sure, he knows how to bring in a crowd. Whether people want to see him shine or see him get wrecked, they're watching. This fight, with all its controversy and build-up, has people fired up. Fans want answers. Can Jake actually hang with a real fighter? Love him or not, the man moves numbers. And in boxing, that noise...
Breaking news, Jake Paul is going to be taking on former world champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in a fight that I think is going to fool a lot of people. Now, what do I mean by fool a lot of people? What I mean is people are going to, on paper, look at this and be like, oh, Jake Paul gets schooled here, gets schooled here. Chavez Jr. is 39. He was not known as a very disciplined boxer during his prime. That's one of the reasons he had such a heavy decline. He's also a lot smaller than Jake Paul. What I will say about Jake Paul is he is a genius, or his team and management are geniuses at giving him opponents that people on paper look at and be like, oh, Jake Paul's not a real fighter, he won't be able to beat this guy. This is very, 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 very minimal risk for Jake Paul. The only factor that could come into play here is if Chavez Jr. decides he actually wants to show up properly for this fight, conditioned, and use his experience to win. But Jake Paul, for me, and his team have been very, very careful about who they matchmake him against ever since the Tommy Fury fight. You know, ever since here, we haven't seen him in there with someone his own age, his own weight, and his own sort of experience. For me, if Jake Paul wants to be a YouTube boxer still, and he wants to be considered an influencer boxer, matchmaking him against these guys that on paper, oh, this is a big challenge for Jake Paul, in reality not really, is okay. But I think if Jake Paul actually is what he says he wants to be, and he wants to make that step up, man, he's going to have to take risks.
That's it for today's video. Don't go far, because we've got more coming your way real soon.